As we set the size of text in the previous movie and in earlier movies, you might have noticed that Dreamweaver gives you lots of options in terms of units of measure for text. You can see we have pixels, points, inches, centimeters, picas, and so on. But if you're like most people, you'll probably use one or two of these measurements on a daily basis, but the rest of them you'll probably never use at all. In this movie, I want to give you a brief overview of these different units. The first four items that you see here are screen measurement units: pixels, ems, x's, and percentage. Meaning that they're only relevant when you're talking about the size of your text on screen, which, given the nature of the web, is probably where most people are going to be viewing your site. The remaining units at the bottom here, points, inches, centimeters, millimeters, and picas, are print measurement units. You'd only really use these if you intended to print out your website, so you probably won't use these measurements too much. But let's see what each of these mean anyway. First of all, pixels refer to the actual pixels of the device viewing the content. So if a font size is set to 12 pixels, its height will be 12 pixels on the device viewing the content. Pixel measurements are the most reliable between different operating systems and devices because they sort of lock in the size. The em size is a relative measurement, which means it can change based on the context it's used in. 1 em is equal to the current size of the text. So if you set a font to be 1.5 ems, it will be 1.5 times the default size, whether that default size is generated by another CSS rule or by the browser's default. The x measurement is similar to the em, but its height is based on the height of a lowercase x in the current font. And I've really never had a use for this particular measurement. You can pretty much ignore it. The percentage measurements will render pretty much exactly the same as em measurements. So if you set a font size to be 150%, it's the same as rendering a 1.5 em. And so it's going to be 150% of the default size, again, whether it's generated by a CSS rule or the browser default. Point measurements are used for printing, and each point is equal to 1/72nd of an inch, if you want to jot that down for some reason. You can also size print content by inches, centimeters, and millimeters if you wanted to. And you also have picas, and a pica is actually equal to 12 points. So if you want to do the math, feel free. Again, I really highly doubt you'll ever use points, inches, centimeters, millimeters, or picas. So which measurements should you use? Well, pixels are going to give you the most control over how your text will appear, and I tend to prefer pixels myself. But there's a growing movement to use ems, because instead of locking your visitors into a fixed text size with pixels, ems will change in relation to the base font size, either set by you in the body tag or CSS, or by the browser's default text size. So ems allow users to have more control over the size at which the text on your page is displayed. But pixels lock down the sizes more. In some browsers, when you use pixels, you can't actually use the browser to make the text smaller or larger at all. If that's a concern to you, if you want people with maybe slight vision problems to be able to make your text bigger, you might want to consider using ems. If you want to be able to lock in the size more, you can use pixels. It basically depends on who you want to have the control. But for consistency's sake, we're going to continue using pixels as our measurement unit for the rest of these exercises.